It is Tuesday, August 12th, and brand new inflation data released this morning. Are prices rising like they've been telling us they would for months? For almost 7 months, we've been told prices would rise month after month for almost 7 months, that they'd spike because of Trump's tariffs. Are they? No, they're not. Wait till you see this, and new shocking data showing who's eating these Trump tariffs. Someone has to pay for them, right? Wait till you see this, something Jerome Powell was just forced to confront in the hands down best 5 minutes of Senate testimony all year. Jerome Powell getting cooked. This is a must-see clip and more stories as well from around the country.
So now 17 past the hour, let's get to news about your money. Consumer Price Index released earlier today. And the big headline showing inflation rising 2.7% on an annual basis. That's lower than estimated. Wall Street reacting in a big way. The Dow is up 400 points, but booming. Wow.
So after 7 months of panic and fear that prices would rise, that the tariffs would cause inflation to spike. That's what we've been told now for months, almost 7 months now, and it hasn't happened. Not yet. Jerome Powell, the chair of the Federal Reserve, someone who's supposed to be nonpartisan, who's supposed to go out of his way to never interdict on political decisions. Even though many of us want him to at times, he's not supposed to. He's never supposed to weigh in on political matters, on policy. It's why as much as many of us hoped during COVID he would have said something about shutting down the entire economy, that it was a terrible idea, or when the Biden administration signed that illegal executive order about their jab mandate. If you work at a company with over 100 employees, you must be jabbed or be fired. Remember that? Something that is clearly a risk to the U.S. economy, to our labor market, something that would affect inflation and the job market. Powell, though, saying nothing quiet about that. Yet when it comes to Donald Trump, when it comes to Trump's tariffs, he can't seem to shut up.
And what we're waiting for to reduce rates is to understand what will happen with really the tariff inflation. And there's a lot of uncertainty about that. Every forecaster you can name who is a professional forecaster with adequate resources and forecasts for a living is forecasting pretty significant. Everyone that I know is forecasting a meaningful increase in inflation in coming months from tariffs, because someone has to pay for the tariffs.
So who exactly is eating Trump's tariffs? We're going to show you in a minute, because we have brand new data about this, shocking data. It sure as hell isn't Americans. It's now been almost 7 months, and so far he's wrong. So wrong, in fact. July's CPI report dropping this morning. Inflation for last month, for the month of July, coming in at 0.2%, lower than expectations, and exactly where the Fed wants it. Lower than where they want it, in fact. They want 2 to 3% annual inflation. That's the Fed's goal. That's what they strive to see. Well, we're actually below that. Watch.
When you look at the key categories that we always look at, energy, food, and shelter, energy fell by 1.1%. That was largely driven because of gas prices falling in the month of July by 2.2%. Look at that food. I mean, this is where people spend their money, right? Food every single day. Food flat, 0%, and actually down at the grocery store by 0.1%. And then shelter, we always usually see an increase because that is what people are paying on rent, and we know that rents are rising.
Energy falling again, down 1.1% in July. That's the price of gas, down. Food prices haven't risen at all. Food and groceries coming in at 0% inflation on food. Realize that's basically deflation. The Fed wants 2% annual price growth. Well, if we have 0% price growth, that eventually turns into deflation because wages continue rising, but prices don't. Now, the three big sectors here, energy, food, and shelter, 2 of them are down. Energy and food prices both down. Not rising at 2%. Energy prices are down 1.1%. They fell 1.1%. The Fed wants them to rise 2%. They're down. Food prices, groceries, at 0%. The only sector that's up is shelter. And why is that? Because Jerome Powell refuses to cut rates. Home prices, rents, only come down if borrowing becomes cheaper. If Powell cuts the night rate, that's the one thing, the one sector that Trump can't control. Trump taking to Truth Social for a victory lap on this inflation report and to once again slam and pressure Jerome Powell, announcing the DOJ will be filing a lawsuit against the Federal Reserve, writing this: Jerome Too Late Powell must now lower the rate. Steve Mnuchin really gave me a beauty when he pushed this loser on me. The damage he's done by always being too late is incalculable. Fortunately, the economy's so good that we've blown through Powell and the complacent board. I am, though, considering allowing a major lawsuit against Powell to proceed because of the horrible and grossly incompetent job he's done in managing the construction of the Fed buildings. $3 billion tax dollars for a job that should have been a $50 million fix-up. Not good. Meanwhile, more evidence continues surfacing showing who is really eating these Trump tariffs. And it's not Americans. Look at this shocking new data on imported car prices. Realize car prices is one sector you'd expect to see rise. So many pieces of a car are imported, exported. It's very difficult to make a full car, to manufacture a full car. This was one of the most worrying sectors, concerning sectors during the Trump administration's tariff rollout. This chart showing car prices, though, from Japan. All the experts have been saying that import prices will rise, especially on cars and trucks, and that Americans will have to pay more for the same products that we've been importing, especially car prices. Well, what do you know? This chart showing for years, year after year, import car prices were rising and rising until now. An almost 15% drop in prices. This is proof that whoever is eating these tariffs, it sure as hell ain't Americans. Instead, we're seeing prices fall for the first time. And wouldn't you just love to see Jerome Powell forced to look at this chart and explain it? Explain, how could you be so wrong, Chairman Powell? You're costing our country hundreds of billions of dollars a year in interest because you refuse to cut rates on a flawed theory. Americans can't buy homes right now because you refuse cutting rates. You say because tariffs will cause prices to rise. Well, if that's true, explain this chart then. Wouldn't that be a sight to see? Well, luckily, that's exactly what just happened. Jerome Powell testifying in front of the Senate Commerce Committee, getting spanked by Senator Bernie Moreno from the great state of Ohio. Senator Moreno using his 5 minutes of question time to hone in on why Trump's tariffs seem to be the only political topic you seem to talk about. You never once weighed in on Biden's policies, even when they directly affect the economy. But when it comes to Trump's tariffs, you can't seem to shut up, pulling out this chart that we just looked at and saying, explain how you've been so wrong, Chairman Powell. This was a great clip. It's a bit long. It's like 5 minutes, but it's worth watching. In my opinion. Roll the tape.
You can't. In other words, is it full employment is full employment? Every American has a job, but they're making minimum wage versus having a family-sustaining wage. Does that matter to the Federal Reserve?
It would matter to the country a lot.
I'm saying, does it matter to the Federal Reserve when you're making your decision?
Honestly, we don't really have the tools to affect that.
Right. So it doesn't factor in. Now that's different than us. The people of this country elect us to make certain that their wages are higher than inflation. And by the way, let the records show that real wages are up this year. So we've done that, not the Federal Reserve. Second piece of it is, let's talk about inflation first.
Well, we've helped control inflation, which is part of that.
We're going to jump right into the inflation conversation. There's different kinds of inflation. There's different causes. There's not witnesses to inflation. There's key actors to inflation. Would you agree?
Sure.
Okay. So let's talk about the actors. Did you comment during COVID lockdowns that was a bad idea, meaning that you're shutting down the entire economy? It's not a button. I hit the button, you can hear me. It's on and off. COVID wasn't that. We just shut down the economy. Any comments on that?
Of course not.
Okay, so you didn't comment on that. Vaccine mandates, something that my Democrat colleagues loved. If you don't get the vaccine, you're a terrible human being. You can't go to work. In fact, Joe Biden was overruled by the Supreme Court because he said that if you work in a company with more than 100 employees and you don't get vaccinated, the company has the ability to fire you, unless you prove that you're negative on COVID. That obviously is a supply chain shock. Wouldn't you agree? If I'm running an assembly line and now I have to put my people 6 feet apart and now I have people quitting or not coming to work or I have to fire them, that's a supply chain shock. Wouldn't you agree?
I mean, it's a medical thing that you
No, but it's a supply chain shock.
George Washington.
I'm not asking you to make a medical decision. I'm asking you to make a Fed decision on inflation.
way outside anything we would come.
But it affects inflation because supply.
It didn't. In fact.
Are you saying that supply chain shocks don't affect inflation?
They do, but that
Okay,
one
they do.
didn't.
So that's clearly one. If you ban the export of liquid natural gas, which is going to cause the commodity price to go up, would that supply shock not also cause inflation?
Potentially could.
Yeah. So, and now the ranking member loves to talk about billionaire corporations, that are going to get away with paying taxes, right? Who pays corporate taxes? Like, who pays it? Is it like some obscure Wizard of Oz character behind the curtain that is a corporate entity that pays taxes? Who pays taxes?
I mean, ultimately, it's shareholders and customers.
So I'm going to read you a line. You tell me this is accurate. On taxes, it's not possible to know in advance precisely how the costs will be shared for taxes. I added
Correct.
that.
I would
But
agree.
it is highly likely that consumers will pay a meaningful share. Meaning if the ranking member has her way, let's just tax corporations at 100%. Why not? Be fantastic, right? Nobody would want to start a company, but that aside, that cost would be added to consumer products, correct?
A tax or a tariff? What are you talking about now?
If the income tax for American corporations goes up, they will share that tax burden with their consumers. True or false?
Yeah, ultimately.
Yeah. So then taxes do raise inflation, but you don't comment on.
I mean, they haven't.
and you
That's
don't.
just-
but
that's
you
just
don't.
not true. I mean,
I got
empirically, it's not true.
The chairman's going to beat me up in 56 seconds. So, but you sent me a very nice letter, which I appreciate. And it says the Federal Reserve plays no role in commenting on trade policy. So you don't comment on supply shocks. You don't comment on tax policy, which clearly affects inflation. You don't comment on demand pull. You just said now that we should forgive student debt. Why is a person that goes to Harvard, that gets a gender studies major, pays Harvard obscene amounts of money because professors are grossly overpaid there? Is that person better than a working class Ohioan that is a plumber but can't afford a car because interest rates are too high and car prices have gone up? Why don't we forgive that person's car loan instead of forgiving their student loan? But you don't comment on that. You comment on tariffs. So I'm going to just show you.
I don't comment on tariffs at all, actually. I comment on
only
inflation.
commented on tariffs. You've
I'm
only
not commenting on the
tariffs.
wisdom of tariffs.
Look, the chairman's over there in the conversation. I'm going to show you a chart here. This is car prices.
I'm
This
paying
is-
attention,
this
however. You're
This is
now
car
on.
prices since this year. Car prices are down. Car prices are down. Inflation in America is down. We got elected by millions of voters. You got elected by one person. He doesn't want you to be in that job. And you are costing this government $400 billion a year by refusing to lower interest rates. Nobody in this chamber has that kind of power to have a $400 billion impact on this economy, on our deficit. And I just think that you should consider whether you're really looking at this from a fiscal lens or a political lens, because you just don't like tariffs.
The pressure campaign clearly back on for Jerome Powell. We're now seeing cracks forming in the labor market, inflation not rising at all. This is the time to cut rates. In fact, they're late. They should have cut rates 6 months ago. Once the labor market breaks, it's almost impossible to fix. It takes years to correct. Hence why Trump's dubbed this guy too late Powell. Let me know what you think. Will the Fed cut rates in September? The next FOMC meeting is scheduled for September 16th. We're looking for a big cut, at least a 50 basis point cut. Last time, there was so much pressure on Powell, he almost had to refuse to cut rates just so he didn't look like he was being pressured. This time, though, he knows he's too late. He knows he needs to cut. Let me know what you think. All right, that wraps up this episode. Like, subscribe. We'll see you next time.